Our top story, once again, a mass exodus is underway along Florida's coast. Hurricane Milton is expected to make landfall late tomorrow, directly hitting Tampa. It could become the worst storm to hit the city in over 100 years, and it will make landfall just weeks after Florida was hit by another hurricane.
This one coming out of Milton, I'm a little bit nervous because I went through Katrina, and that was mainly winds that destroyed everything. And everything's projectile out here right now because everybody's house is on the front yard, and so all this is going to be pretty much missiles coming through. The amount of wind that's going through with this hurricane coming in, I'm not staying for this one.
Many people are still clearing out debris from Hurricane Helene. Now another 4 meters of storm surges are expected in some areas. More than 1 million people are evacuating inland or north. Now, weather authorities are calling the hurricane, quote, extremely dangerous. And U.S. President Joe Biden is urging anyone who is still home to leave immediately.
Most importantly, I've urged everyone currently located in Hurricane Milton's path to listen to local officials and follow safety instructions. You all have been reporting on the highways, shoulders being opened, everybody's heading out. And if you're under evacuation orders, you should evacuate now. You should have already evacuated. It's a matter of life and death, and that's not hyperbole. It's a matter of life and death. So let me add that FEMA has provided 300 ambulances to move people who can't move themselves out of healthcare facilities. And while we prepare for Hurricane Milton, we're still surging resources in North Carolina, Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, Tennessee to respond to Hurricane Helene. And it's real. The impact is still there.
President Biden says he's been in regular contact with Florida's governor about preparations. Ron DeSantis says that he's happy with the administration's willingness to approve their requests and praised his state's efforts to prepare.
We have an unprecedented effort underway. I want to thank everyone that's been involved. It's not easy, especially when you've just responded to a Category 4 storm, Helene, to have it done. I know everybody's tired. Trust me, we get it. We're wearing out the Celsius at the state EOC, but what you're doing is important. Hang in there and let's get the job done.
Hurricane Milton is now a Category 5 storm, but could weaken by the time it makes landfall tomorrow. Even if it does, though, the impacts are still expected to be devastating. As we mentioned, it's now on track toward Tampa, which hasn't been directly hit by a hurricane since 1921. Well, CNN's Lee Waldman is in the Tampa area with the latest as the storm approaches. So, Lee, tell us about what you're hearing from people as they brace for Milton.
Travis, we're hearing that people are scared here in Tampa, which is why they're heeding the warning of officials to pack up what they need and head out of Tampa. We know that this storm is packing with it some serious storm surge. 10 to 15 feet of storm surge. That gets up to the second floor of a 2-story home. That's a lot of water coming in. But you can also see a massive pile of debris behind me. This is debris left over from Hurricane Helene that hit here less than 2 weeks ago. That's complicating this storm. It's going to clog the storm drains that are around this area. These piles of debris, they can be picked up by the hurricane force winds, tossed around. That's going to make this all the more dangerous. That's why people who said that they have never left from a storm before, that's why they picked up and packed up and left.
Pretty incredible to see all that debris that, as you say, could become projectiles with this latest storm. Now, Lee, Governor DeSantis outlined the final preparations. What did he say? And also, is there a sense that Florida is ready as Milton approaches?
Well, Governor DeSantis said that they are bringing in fuel trucks to make sure that Floridians who are along the western coast of Florida can fuel up their vehicles, fuel up those fuel tanks that they're taking with them so that they can head inland and up the coast to get out of the direct line of path of this storm. They are working around the clock to try and clear up some of this debris that they can. The cleanup efforts, they have to cut off at some point so that those responders can get out of the way of this storm themselves and get to a safe area. There is a sense that Florida is prepared, but what Governor DeSantis is telling Florida, it's not just a western coast of Florida problem. It's an all of Florida problem. He is waiving the toll fees across the highways in Florida, opening up the shoulders so that the roads can be open, so that the people who are evacuating, that everyone should be evacuating if they're here in Tampa and along the coast of Florida, that they can get out of here as quickly as possible. Do not wait. If you're here, get out now.
Indeed, that is the message, loud and clear. CNN's Lee Waldman in Tampa, Florida for us. Thank you, Lee. Okay, let's bring in CBC News science and climate specialist Darius Mockabee. He's in Vancouver. So Darius, what is the latest on the storm's track?
It is continuing to move towards Florida, Travis. The track has moved a little bit south from where it was earlier today. It continues to track a little bit south, which is good news. A direct hit on Tampa is still not out of the question right now, but maybe a little bit of good news. We'll talk about that in a second. For now, take a look at where the storm is now as it continues to strengthen once more. Even compared to when we talked half an hour ago, Travis, the storm has strengthened by a few millibars in terms of that pressure. Wind speeds are still around 270 kilometers per hour. If the storm continues to strengthen, we could see it drop below 900 millibars once again. When that happened yesterday, that's what made it one of the top 5 strongest Atlantic hurricanes ever recorded. So hopefully we won't see that. The storm is expected to weaken over the next 6 to 12 hours. Hopefully that is what we see. The storm is packing winds equivalent to a EF5, the strongest classification of tornado. At that strength, houses would be torn from their foundations, and it is expected to be a major hurricane when it makes landfall in Florida. You can see how well defined the eye of the storm is in this satellite imagery. It's just the strength of this storm is just unbelievable, and this late in the season, the direction that it's heading, it's all just very unusual. It's not odd to see a major hurricane at this time of year. It is odd the path that it's taking. Tampa hasn't been hit by a hurricane in over 100 years, and this seems like that very well is again in the cards. Now here you can see the track that's expected to take, again weakening somewhat as it moves towards Florida. The atmospheric conditions closer to the Florida coast are not as favorable for that hurricane, but still we have hurricane warnings, we have tropical storm warnings, hurricane watches in place for large parts of the Florida coast, because even after the storm makes landfall, it is expected to come out the other side still as a hurricane, which is very unusual and sets the stage for a lot of damage to be done. We're already seeing some very heavy rainfall come to parts of Florida. You can see all the lightning strikes that are happening around that storm. You can see how much rain is expected over the next 48 hours. In many places, over 500 millimeters of rainfall close to that path just north of there, which is when you see the worst rain. And again, that storm surge, Travis, especially in places like Tampa, very prone to flooding, could be the most deadly part of the storm.
Okay, so Darius, with this storm shifting south and possibly shifting south with this latest forecast, well, what does that mean for the people in Florida?
A little bit of good news for people in Tampa, which is the U.S. city most likely to flood because of a hurricane. Take a look here. We'll look at that storm surge map again. I want to zoom in to Tampa this time and just take a look. If we layer on a hurricane where the current trajectory is expected to be, you can see those winds blowing counterclockwise would actually draw some of that water away from Tampa Bay, which would be good news. Still likely to see a decent amount of flooding, a decent amount of storm surge, but it's a better situation. If that storm does track north directly over Tampa, you can see how those winds would just blow all that water directly towards the city. We're talking a city of 3 million people that would just be absolutely devastated by all that rain. If we take a look here, you can see the impacts that would be expected across much of Florida. We're talking many areas that could see catastrophic levels of damage, particularly in Tampa and areas just south of there, like Sarasota. And then the last thing I want to show you is this quote from the National Hurricane Center in their official public forecast. Evacuations and other preparations should be completed today. And the reason for that is that they go on to say Milton has the potential to be one of the most destructive hurricanes on record for West Central Florida. So Travis, this is not a situation where you can wait it out. This is, if you're going to evacuate for any storm, this is the one.
Some good advice there. Darius Mockabee, appreciate this. We will check in with you again soon. That is CBC Science and Climate Specialist Darius in Vancouver. And let's turn now to Jeremy Mockabee, who is the commanding officer at the Salvation Army at Tampa. Thanks for joining us. You're in Lakeland, I understand, which is about 40 minutes east of Tampa. As the hurricane really looms over Tampa, how are you and your team helping this community prepare?
Yeah, thanks for having us, first of all, Travis. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, a lot of the preparation has been made prior to this. So it's nothing, we weren't caught off guard. We're not back on our heels. A lot of what we have done are things that we've already put in place. Now, a lot of that logistics was in place already because of Helene. So now we're turning our focus, shifting our focus from Helene to Milton to be able to respond aggressively and serve compassionately to those who need our help the most in this difficult time.
As I was speaking with Lee, we were talking about, the historic nature of this. Has the Salvation Army ever seen anything like this before? And tell me what resources are in place right now to help the community.
Yeah, so the Salvation Army has seen just about every major storm from as far back as long as I can remember. So we are ready. We are geared up. We have people in place. We have already put specific incident command teams in strategic places. So as soon as the storm passes, we can be serving literally within hours of the storm passing. So again, that's working with local people, local law enforcement, state leaders, local leaders, to be able to be in the best position that the Salvation Army can to respond as quickly as possible to, again, those who are just getting ready to go through a difficult situation again on top of the last hurricane.
Well, let's talk about vulnerable communities, particularly seniors. What's the plan to provide assistance to them?
Right. So again, a lot of that stuff is done on the front end, where we make sure that we're working with as many partner agencies as we can to make sure that everybody's kind of doing their part, doing their niche, if you will, at what they're good at. And a lot of that is being able to communicate as quickly and transparent as possible. So working with other agencies to get word out as soon as we can to those places so that they are able to share the information that they need to be as safe as possible. We are already responding by giving over 200 cots to some senior citizen homes. So we're already responding to those calls for help for those more vulnerable communities, such as those senior population or those who are experiencing homelessness as well.
In the immediate aftermath, what are the resources that are needed the most?
Yeah, so it's very interesting that you asked that. So there's, first of all, I should say that there's a couple ways that you can give specifically to the Salvation Army. One of them is 1-800-SAL-ARMY, and another way is helpsalvationarmy.org. The best way that people can give right now is financially, so that we can continue to do the work moving forward after this storm leaves. A lot of people, they want to give items, give clothes. And while those things are certainly going to be needed down the road, sometimes that can be difficult to store until we get to that point. So really, monetary donations at that 1-800-SAL-ARMY phone, the phone that you can call 1-800-SAL-ARMY, or again, that helpsalvationarmy.org to give financially, again, to help us be as in the community as we possibly can, helping those who are vulnerable.
What's your message to those that are choosing to stay behind?
Yeah, I would echo the governor's advice, the president's advice, that you need to get out as quickly as possible. And again, there's still maybe a little bit of time, but at this point, those who may still be in those impacted areas or potential impacted area really need to listen to local and state and federal law enforcement and really need to get out. This is a catastrophic storm. This is going to be one that a lot of people are saying is unlike any other storm. So to put yourself at risk, or others that may be with you, or law enforcement that may have to respond, probably isn't the best decision. So my advice to those who may be listening still, get out as quickly as you possibly can.
Let me just ask you before I let you go here, on a personal note, what is responding to a disaster like this emotionally like for somebody like you or some of the first responders?
Travis, it's really kind of twofold. I mean, in one sense, it's absolutely heartbreaking. I can't tell you how many. I literally just got back from serving as the incident commander 2 weeks on Helene, and to be boots on the ground, to be literally knee deep into mud, to be having people cry on your shoulder because they lost everything. It's devastating. But at the same time, what's encouraging, if there's any silver lining to this, what's encouraging is to see the community come together, to see people helping people, organizations, the Salvation Army, obviously, churches coming alongside and helping their fellow brother and sister out, regardless of who they are, regardless of their background, regardless of anything else. The silver lining in it all is to see community come together to support one another, encourage one another. And what the Salvation Army gets to do is to bring hope in a really, really difficult situation.
Yeah, and we know what is expected, and it is not looking good right now. Jeremy, I know that the community appreciates that you are there. We hope that you remain safe in the days to come. That is Jeremy Mockabee, who is the commanding officer at the Salvation Army in Tampa. Okay, my next guests, Cindy Edwards and Colin Trethewey, are Canadians who have faced the challenges of navigating 2 hurricanes. Recently, they made the tough decision to evacuate from Tampa to Orlando to escape the impending threat of Hurricane Milton. They join me now from Orlando. Thanks for making the time here. Guys, it is good to see you. Let me start with you, Colin. What have the past couple of days been like for you both? And what is it like hearing that forecast from Darius that it's going to likely, potentially make a direct hit there in Tampa?
Yeah, it's been a very difficult week or so because we were recovering from Helene before this. We have properties on the beach just across the way from Sarasota on Anna Maria Island, which was hit with 3 to 4 feet of storm surge in the last storm. And I can tell you 3 feet of storm surge does an immense amount of damage. It's like the whole ocean, the whole Gulf of Mexico went right across the island and met the bay on the other side. So, and then it went back and forth a couple times. So we cleaned up our condo ground floor, had to throw everything out, including all appliances. Everything just rolled around inside there. It was just a big layer of mud. So I can't imagine if you doubled or tripled those numbers, or even 4 times those numbers, if it got up to 12 feet or 4 meters, major issues.
Cindy, can you share what your experience was like during Hurricane Helene and how that really impacted both of your decisions to evacuate this time and go to Orlando?
Well, where we live is not in a flood zone, so we were okay during Helene, but when we went down to our properties and we saw the damage that was done, it was shocking, the power of water and how much it just took our furniture and just threw it all around and put a huge layer of mud throughout our condo. So we've got all that stuff and we've put it out at the curb, and unfortunately it's still out there.
Right.
So when this next surge comes, and it looks like it might, all of that debris will just become projectiles. So people who have 2nd and 3rd floor places might not be safe, and we have a couple of those as well.
Right, and I mean, that is the concern. We were speaking with Lee there from CNN, who was giving us a tour around the area, and there are these piles of debris everywhere, and as you say, they could become projectiles. What's your message to your fellow Floridians? I know you're Canadian, but you're Floridians as well, that are choosing to stay in these areas where there's an evacuation order?
Colin has some hockey buddies.
I was playing hockey Sunday night, just the men's league, and I needed a break. So after cleaning up from Helene, and there's 10 guys on our team, and 9 of them are staying. I'm the only one that came inland.
There are 9 staying.
All of them are staying.
Wow.
Yeah, and a couple of them are right in the low zone A, as they call it, the highest likelihood of flood, right at the end of Tampa Bay. So. Hopefully, I've been sending texts to the teammates telling them to leave. Usually the joke memes get a better response than a serious text saying you're in the eye of a storm. But let's hope they heeded my advice and get out of the way, because I saw what even 3 or 4 feet can do. I'm
interested, Colin, when you talk to your buddies, what do they say in terms of what the rationale is to stay? Do they downplay like how bad this could be?
Yeah, I think a little bit of that. There's also kind of a tough guy mentality, just sort of, this is a bit of an adventure kind of approach. They're those kind of guys, but this is not something you want to play around with. We've been in storms that have been maybe 80, 90 miles an hour of wind. It's been pretty terrifying. I was late cleaning up our house, and we were evacuating to someone else's house for a previous storm, and I was on the roads, and it was not pretty. There were just police and debris flying all over the place, even at 80, 90 miles an hour. So I recommend just getting out of Dodge. Yeah.
I think there's a false sense of security because Tampa has been in the path so many times, and then the eye changes direction, and people say, "Well, look, it didn't get us last time."
Right.
Well, it doesn't mean it's not going to get you this time. So we always err on the side of caution. We hope that it goes away, but it's going to hit shore somewhere, and we're not taking any chances with this.
We heard from the president earlier. We heard from the governor of Florida. How ready do you think the community of Tampa is, and also Florida in general as a state, for Milton coming?
Well, there's a lot of support at the border, as I'm sure you've seen, or just beyond the storm threat. We love seeing the video of the 20,000, 30,000 utility workers, including a lot of Canadians, just amazing. There's actually a Nova Scotia connection to TECO, the Tampa electric company down here. It's owned by a Canadian company. And someone from Cindy's hometown of Bathurst, New Brunswick, was the CEO of that for many years, just coincidentally. But the Canadians were looking forward to their support, and so many others from other states. So that's good to know. And generally, the governor and President Biden and past presidents work together in times of need, or at least we certainly hope so. And I think that's the case this time.
Mm-hmm. It looks like it. Last question. What would you like to say to friends and family that might be on this side of the border that are pretty worried about you guys and everybody else in Florida right now?
Well, as far as ourselves go, we're doing everything in our power to stay safe and stay out of the path. I think we are going to see a lot of wind. I think we are going to see a lot of rain. They're talking about tornadoes. We're hoping not. Please, I know it's easy for me to say, don't worry. I know that's probably impossible, but we are not going to take any unnecessary chances. We're doing everything in our power to stay safe.
Yeah, we're not concerned about property damage. We're just concerned about being safe and trying to convince our friends and other people in the area to get out and take it seriously, obviously.
And that is the most important thing.
Yeah. Definitely.
Cindy, Colin, appreciate your time here on Canada Tonight, and do stay safe. That is Cindy Edwards and Colin Trethewey, Canadians living in Florida, joining us from Orlando this evening.